And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to hear from the man himself, the author of the book, The Cobweb Turns 60 Tales of Intaxicating Sailing, and the driving force behind TIOL. With a round of applause, let's welcome Dr. Shailendra Kumar.
Good morning, to dignitaries on the dais. A very special morning to Justice Chandy Othman and Her Highness. They expressed their desire to be a part of this book launch, and Honorable Chairman of TIOL Awards Jury, Justice Shivakriti Singh. Thank you, sir. And of course, a lot of dignitaries and one of my very old gurus from the taxation world, Sri A.K. Pandey, sir, who is here today. It's very rare to have him. Thank you, sir. And lots of friends. Thank you, everybody. Good morning to all of you once again. Thank you for joining me in large number. Our day is very pleasantly packed with many enchanting sessions, and I do look forward to welcome you all there. My very special bouquet of Damascus rose to all those who have written the forewords for me and for this book, and also for those who could not write because of their very tight schedule, but they could make it. So, a bucket of flowers to Haribhakti sir. I had given him very short time. He is a very passionate green evangelist and a futurist, but he could make it today. I am very thankful to all of you for joining today. I am certainly no less thankful to my publisher, Oakbridge, and especially the editor, Priyanka. I don't see her around, but she was the one who could, her tireless efforts could actually catch the timeline. So thank you, Priyanka. Friends and dignitaries, I have already, the dignitaries on the dais have spoken so much about the book that I don't think that I am really left with much to elaborate on. In fact, many of you have been sailing with me as I keep sharing that weekly column in the morning every week. But what prompted me to write this book is actually the aging of the column, the 20 long years. I was reminded that 20 long years is a pretty long period, and believe that it's a long. So I thought that, it actually pops up an occasion to do something different. And I must thank Mr. Vijay Kumar and my colleague Sunil Chutan, who immediately endorsed that opinion that yes, you can go ahead with this. Though the civilized world tends to attribute many connotations to the phenomenon of aging, which I was talking about, 20 long years. But for writers, the aging means climbing a mountain and having a much better view, an holistic view of the world, a sort of Botox experience to overcome time and spatial distortions of truth. And that is what you will find in this book on a very, very taxing subject of how the world of taxation has evolved in the last 2 decades, and to some extent, what may unfold in the coming decades. If you believe that taxes cannot be funny and lazy, then you need to alter your perception. The first chapter itself will enable you to binge on different types of tax-related humor, blended with tons of historical facts. Anyway, the 3 or rather 4 observations I would like to make here, very briefly. First, our market-driven world is undergoing a kind of unprecedented scale of seismic changes. Globalization has begun paving the way for unilateralism and ultranationalism across the world. It's not happening in a particular geography. Since geoeconomics is very tightly intertwined with geopolitics, the world is heading for political instability, rather from political stability to a period of instability. And this is going to be immensely detrimental to a large slice of global population. Welfare of the people would suffer more with a scary spike in defense spending. That is my concern across the world. Leave aside major spenders like the US and China. Even a small country like South Korea is going for a defense expenditure of $47 billion for 2026. NATO nations alone have committed, or they are projected to spend about $800 billion by 2035. That is in addition to whatever their budget is. If we look at if the rich world are going to do so, the global South nations are already starved of precious resources, would be compelled to shift their limited resources from welfare, from health, from education, from environment to their defense. Our neighbor like Nepal, for instance, which spends about $450 million US dollar on defense, is projected to spend $1.3 billion by 2035. Similarly, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, they are going to spend $11 billion, almost doubling down on their defense budget. What about India? We are presently spending around $78 billion, and we would be spending $180 billion by 2035. What does it mean? A race to armament would necessarily lead to either slashing of the budgets for the welfare sectors or a sharp jump in taxation. The contrasting recent examples are France, where people are out on the streets for fiscal justice. On the other side, across the aisle, we have Russia, which is going for a fresh dose of tax hike. That is the future which is very scary for the people on this planet now, for the next coming 1 decade. And my second observation is the global debt has skyrocketed above 235% of the global GDP. Numerically, it's about $251 trillion, including public debt of almost $99 trillion. In the coming years, the swelling debt is going to further squeeze the fiscal space for most countries, and the taxpayers may be subjected to shoulder a large slice of the growing weight of debt. That is the second scare I have. And the third observation is that our planet is overheating, going through a very critical phase of ailing. Nature has already begun taking a sort of revenge on reckless and greedy approach of mankind. If you go by the number of typhoons, cloudbursts, landslides, wildfires, the deadly consequences of nature's revenge can be seen all around us, no matter where we reside. Since climate has steadily emerged as a major head of spending, in the years to come, all the governments across the world would be expanding the scope of environmental tax, pollution tax, and certainly carbon tax on most of the human activities. More than 50 countries have already imposed carbon tax with limited latitude, which they will certainly expand in the coming years. We are living in a techno era, as Haribhakti sir talked about AI and how blockchain and technology is impacting the human activities across the globe. In fact, technology is racing ahead without any guardrails in place, and that is scary. Artificial intelligence is penetrating every aspect of our life, particularly the business processes, and I can clearly see that the days are not far when the fiscal policy makers will have to go for a new tax, which Haribhakti sir suggested, the robo-tax. Because if you look at the scale of automation, the robotics are replacing human beings. The fiscal planners, the tax planners will have no option but to go for robo-tax. To deal with automation, if the world finds the words of Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather of artificial intelligence, come true, and what it said was very scary, there is about 10% chance of artificial intelligence wiping out humanity. So the creator is talking about that what we have created perhaps will become a Frankenstein tomorrow. And that is where perhaps the fiscal planners and taxmen could be a good guardrail if they impose a spine-breaking tax to restrain such a monster from destroying humanity. So taxation could be very useful that way. Similarly, with the geopolitical race heating up to set up colonies on the moon, to exploit minerals, it's a kind of mineral race now. Some economists have already floated the idea of moon tax. And like the Star Wars serial most of us used to watch at one point of time, a lot of things used to be figments of imagination. All these taxes which we are talking today are certainly not figments of imagination. It's going to happen very soon. And in other technical session, we have one dedicated session on artificial intelligence, and we have super intelligent speakers in that session, and they are going to show you some of those interesting videos. And rather the application of the videos for taxation, GST, arrest, etc., various provisions, that will be a very interesting session I am looking forward to. With these words, I thank all of you, sir, all the dignitaries for your insightful observations, and thank you for your time. Thanks a lot.